everything still same order, nothing changed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll call you up first and last.
Sure, sounds good.
You pray us in, pray us out.
Well, you can do that. You want to pass the plate in between or something?
And, yeah, when Milton said he couldn't come, I said there's only one other man that can replace you, and that's Greg Portman.
Reverend Luke could have done a fine job.
He's great.
I think he's out of town today.
I love David Luke, phenomenal guy, but your voice is golden. To me, the only voice I've ever heard to me that sounds better coming from a speaker or radio is Casey Kasem. And
Keep your feet on the ground.
He's dead.
And keep reaching for the stars.
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
Listen to Casey Kasem every dadgum week.
Yep. He also was the voice of Shaggy on Scooby-Doo.
Yes, he was.
Didn't know that until I was like an adult.
And then there's some guy on the XM that does, where they do a cut of the original weekly countdown. But then some guy picked it up and pretty well emulates it.
He's close. I've heard him, and I thought, all right, that, I mean, you could tell it's not him, but it's still fairly good.
Yeah,
my
my
brother
mother
was in the radio business forever. And,
Oh my God. Okay.
well, he owned, well, before he sold it, he had WMAZ and WAYS.
Okay.
A lot of good friends. And my daughter left the TV industry, but she was news director over at GXA for a number of years. Now she's gone back doing education. Bless her heart.
My mother said I had a face made for radio. I said, Mom, come on.
What's
where do you
the
want us
deal,
to sit?
Jeff? What are we doing today?
Does it matter?
Anything different?
I would like for you to sit by the president if he's seated.
Okay.
Usually he takes one of the first rows. So
Okay.
I want you to stay kind of with him if you
Sure,
will.
that's fine. Whatever you want.
Y'all tell me when to make it hot. You might. I just didn't want to leave it hot while y'all stand around talking.
Yeah, you might want to keep it closed
You
off.
never know what you
now.
might see.
Especially with this guy. You want to.
Right.
He needs to be aware when that
You
mic
can't turn
is
it off and
live.
on from
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But sometimes people forget to match that. And then they start panicking close to the event. Wow, it ain't working.
Good.
Good. Where are the two cadet leaders that I praised to the president? Are they over there?
One is, and that is with the American flag. He's the leader of the color
You are,
guard.
Bubba?
The other
Oh,
two
yeah, I'm
aren't.
good.
Will
I'm
you
good.
introduce me to them? I want to shake their
To
hands.
Newark?
Yeah, I hate using a wired mic in a lot of areas, but these wired mics sound better. Well, I'm running off a battery right here, so I don't have to, if I use a mic like this, I don't have to have no electricity. But if I had a wireless mic, I got to plug the wireless
You got
component
to
up.
streak something across.
Because that system, a lot of times you get a system, they'll already have one outlet on the back.
Right.
That one don't.
Right.
So my reviews on that speaker is great, but it needs one reset that you
one.
could power up a mic if you need
That
to.
makes sense.
To use wireless. So, and I just don't know if the battery is that strong that would do that.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's great for stuff like this.
Sure,
and
heck yeah.
I wire one in.
Oh, too easy.
There's no interference. There won't be nothing with
No,
it.
makes it too easy for something like this.
Yeah. If you tell me when you're ready to make that announcement, I'll cut you on.
I think we're ready right now. I told Craig if you wanted to sit, he and you to sit in that very front row with Fosse. That would be easy for you to go and come.
Okay.
We're about ready to
Do you
get.
want me to just stand on the side? I can do that too.
Whatever you're most
I
comfortable
was just
with,
thinking
sir.
so people can all come down there and come in.
Okay. Whatever
I
you're
just stand
comfortable
on the
with.
side.
We might let Fussell sit down. He's quite elderly.
Oh, no,
Yes.
no.
Agreed.
Why
No,
don't we
I'm
tell
good
him I
with
said
everybody
that?
else sitting. It doesn't bother me at all.
All right.
I'll do whatever you tell me.
I'm about to call everybody to order. Nothing really. Yeah, nothing really.
Is anybody walking up to, where's the color guard coming from?
Right over here to the shrubbery.
So they're coming right here? Okay, so they're on that side. So nobody's coming through here?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Nixie usually takes her seat.
She's just waiting to turn it on whenever you tell her.
Yeah, let me get this. No, not at all. Color guard will be right here.
Speaking roles, what am I speaking roles?
You're going to pledge.
Oh, okay.
All right, everybody, welcome to Georgia Military College. I'm Jeff Wells, this afternoon's MC, so if you would, for those of you who are going to be speaking, if you'll just make your way to the chairs, and we do have some extra seats, about 10 chairs, if those of you who want to take a seat, come on up, don't be shy. Okay. Still have a few more chairs if anybody wants to take a seat. We do want to welcome everybody here today. I think the weather turned out pretty near perfect. I know it's kind of cold, but it is December. All right. So again, my name is Dr. Jeff Wells, and I'll be your MC for this afternoon's ceremonies. We are here today at our 3rd annual Pearl Harbor Memorial Wreath Laying Ceremony. This is a ceremony that is being jointly sponsored by the Exchange Club of Milledgeville and Georgia Military College. So with that being said, we have a few things we need to say in the way of thank yous. So today we not only honor our nation, but we remember the men and women who lost their lives on December 7th, 1941 in the tragic attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So I am the past president, one of the past presidents of the Milledgeville Exchange Club, and serve as vice president of online academics here at GMC. And about 3 years ago, when we started talking about this, I said, who are the 2 men that I need to go to help make this happen? One was Billy Griner, who at that time served as the president of the Milledgeville Exchange Club, and the second one was Lieutenant General William B. Caldwell IV, the president of Georgia Military College. The idea went over like a hit with both of these gentlemen, and we are very fortunate to have Georgia Military College as our host and our co-sponsor. So please, would you please give General Caldwell, his staff, a big round of applause to say thank you for opening up the campus to this today. So December 7th, 1941, in the famous words of President Franklin Roosevelt, is a day, or was a day, that did and will live on in infamy. You're going to hear something today from Lieutenant General Caldwell, our president here at Georgia Military College, that's quite fascinating because he has a direct link to Pearl Harbor. You know, so many of us are so well aware of the sacrifices that were made by the men and women who fought World War II. And if you know anything about American history, and it has become quite popular here of late because it's being discussed in so many places, you know that this country's participation and involvement directly with World War II came on December 7th, 1941, and it forever changed the course of history. As people who enjoy the freedom that is now in place in this country, protected and secured by men and women like those who gave their lives at Pearl Harbor, it is our duty to serve our communities, to be there for our fellow Americans, and be that shining light on a hill that were so envisioned by the founders of this country when they sailed across the great pond we know as the Atlantic. Pearl Harbor is a tiny inlet that sits in Hawaii. And many of us have visited Pearl Harbor. I have not, so I shouldn't say us, but it is one of the destinations that I would say would be on my bucket list. Because when you think about dates in American history, a lot of things stand out. July 4th, 1776, and most recently, September the 11th, 2001. But think about what happened at Pearl Harbor. I think about men and women who were there, like Dory Miller, the cook who was on board one of the ships, who very courageously took a gun and brought down several Japanese Japanese fighter planes who were going to drop bombs in locations around Pearl Harbor. Think about that again, a cook in the United States Army who did not shy away from sacrifice and service to his fellow human beings and to the country and the greater good. Never use that kind of weaponry, and if all of you've seen the movie, Cuba Gooding Jr. gives life to him pretty diligently. I don't know that I could have handled such weaponry, but he seemed like he handled it pretty well. But think about that kind of sacrifice. But there were also Americans who, when the call of war went out from Franklin Roosevelt, who, by the way, my grandfather continued to remind me that that was a crippled man who won a war and led a war successfully that was fought on 6 continents on this planet. When you think about that war and you think about what Americans had to do to win that war, there were millions of people who had to change their lives at home. So their lives were upended by what happened on Pearl Harbor just as well as those men and women who were there in Hawaii that day. My great-grandfather was too old to enlist. He was already in his 50s. But back in 1941 when that hit, he farmed in South Georgia and his 100-plus acres were all tobacco. He told my grandfather and my Uncle Lawrence, who were 9 and 11 at the time, too young to enlist. See, we hit it just in the middle, so we couldn't do anything great-grandfather or grandfather. But he told those 2 young men, he said, I've just sent your uncle, his son and his brother-in-law, I've just sent him to Savannah to enlist. He says, because he's 20 years old and he will fight. And so my Uncle Willard went to Savannah, enlisted, and went into the Army that day or thereafter. But he told my Uncle Lawrence and my grandfather James, he said, the 2 of you are coming out of school today because we're converting this farm into one that produces food to feed these soldiers. So every American was invested in this war, and every American felt the shatter of those attacks on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should honor those men and women here today, because guess what? The theme here at Georgia Military College is authentic servant leadership. And for those that were left behind after that sacrifice, it is incumbent upon us to serve our fellow human beings, to strengthen America, to embolden its stance in the world so that the rest of the world will continue to look at us as a beacon upon the hill and a bastion of freedom and human dignity for all of mankind. It's very important that we do ceremonies like this, that we provide food for the hungry, that we take care of and look out for the least among these. And at Georgia Military College, we teach the young men and women who come through these halls that that is not just their duty, but it is also a way of life. It's not a bumper sticker or a fad in the litany of things that have come down the path in education in America in the last 250 years. But in fact, it is a way of life. And so, as we remember their sacrifices, we do so and continue to serve these people around us, those around us, so that their deaths were not in vain. So at this time, as we open our ceremony, I'm going to call our good friend Reverend Craig Portwood, the Associate Vice President of Alumni and Main Campus Events, to open us with prayer. Afterwards, please remain standing for the posting of colors by the Color Guard of the 145th Corps of Cadets. Reverend Portwood.
Thank you. If you would please stand and join me in prayer. Divine Creator, we gather here on this day of infamy in American history to honor the sacred memory of those who gave their lives. We also honor those who valiantly continue to serve as all responded to the call of duty. And may we always remember in our hearts and minds the sacrifices that were made. And Lord, even though time may pass, may we choose not to be indifferent or forgetful. And may your Spirit at work within us keep us mindful and alert as we strive together to carry on the legacy of servant leadership. And may today be a poignant reminder of the bravery of the human spirit that responds in times of need. And we pray this in all the holy names of God. Amen.
So before we pull the color guard in, I also want to extend a thank you to Major Ben Carrick, Commandant Steve Pitt, and Colonel Robel Ramirez, who are the leadership in the GMC 145th Corps Cadets, for providing this opportunity for these young people today. So at this time, we're going to call up the 145th Corps Cadets Color Guard.
Duck time. Hush. Colors. Hope. Red. Hey. Present. Colors.
Colonel Larry McClendon, retired with the Milledgeville Exchange Club. Would you please come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors.
Thank you, Colonel McClendon, and thank you to these young men who are here today posting colors. As we call up our next speaker, I want to take an opportunity to thank Major Jeff Gray, who is the Vice President of Engineering here at Georgia Military College, Mr. Ken Franks, and their staff for helping clear this area and make sure that this ceremony is both poignant and that you have a free and clear and nice place to do this today. They take such great care of our campus every day, but they went the extra mile today to make sure that we had everything we needed. So at this time, would you please join me in a round of applause for those gentlemen and ladies? So at this time, we will call on the current president of the Milledgeville Exchange Club, Missy Swikard, who will welcome everyone and say a few words. Missy, come on up.
I would like to welcome esteemed guests and members of our Exchange Club, district and local, state, and as well as those members of the community. As a part of the National Exchange Club, One Nation Under God, we would like to have a moment of silence to commemorate those lives lost that day so many years ago. We will remember for a lifetime and lives to come those soldiers that fought then and now so that America can still be called the land of the free. Please bow your heads and join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. We appreciate your leadership in the Milledgeville Exchange Club and support for this event today. You may be seated. We're also very proud to have today with us the Region 10 Vice President of the National Exchange Club, former President of the Georgia District Exchange Club, and also former President of the Albany, Georgia Exchange Club, and a whole litany of other offices that were held and served by this gentleman in Exchange Club and throughout the Albany community and the greater Exchange Club community nationwide. One of the things I like about Fussell the most is that a few years ago he gave me the award for Best Member of the Board of Directors of Georgia Exchange, so he is a fantastic judge of character. Fussell is a good friend of mine, and I asked him if he would travel from Albany with his good buddy Terry Brumbley, who's the editor of the Georgia Exchange Club newsletter. I think where you see one, you see the other, to come and speak to us today on behalf of the National Exchange Club and our focus on Americanism and what today kind of enraptures about all of that. Thank you, Fussell. If you would come to the podium.
Thank you, Jeff. You're still number one.
I try to, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, on behalf of the National Exchange Club, our President, Leif Wellhaven, and our CEO, Ms. Tracy Edwards, welcome. I'm honored to be here today. Today I stand before you to celebrate the essence of Americanism, a concept deeply rooted in the values that have shaped the United States since its founding. Americanism is not merely a patriotic slogan, it's a profound commitment to the principles that define this great nation. At the heart of Americanism is the belief in freedom, the freedom to speak our minds, to worship as we choose, and to pursue our dreams. From the hallowed words of the Declaration of Independence to the enduring ideals of the Constitution, our nation was forged on the idea that all individuals are endowed with certain unalienable rights. In the tapestry of Americanism, diversity is a vibrant thread. The United States is a mosaic of cultures and backgrounds, each contributing to a rich fabric of our society. Our strength lies in our ability to embrace differences, finding unity in our shared commitment to the principles of democracy and equality. Americanism also embodies resilience. Throughout history, our nation has faced challenges that tested the very core of our values. From the struggle for independence to the civil rights movement, Americans have shown an unwavering determination to forge a more perfect union, overcoming obstacles and striving towards a more just society. The spirit of Americanism extends beyond our borders, championing the principles of democracy and human rights around the world. As a beacon of freedom, the United States stands as a symbol of hope for those who seek liberty and justice, inspiring movements for democracy across the globe. Yet, Americanism is not a stagnant concept. It evolves with times. Today, we confront new challenges, from the complexities of rapidly changing world to the imperative of addressing social and environmental issues. As we navigate these waters, we must do so with a commitment to the enduring values that define us while adapting to meet the demands of the present and the future. In conclusion, Americanism is the soul of our nation, a guiding light that has illuminated our path through history. As we reflect on our shared heritage, let us reaffirm our commitment to the principles of freedom, diversity, resilience, and global responsibility. In doing so, we ensure that the flame of Americanism continues to burn brightly, lighting the way for generations to come. Thank you.
Great job. Russell, thank you for being with us. I know it was a good long drive across the entire state of Georgia for you to be here today, but we do appreciate that. And please let Mr. Walhaven and Ms. Edwards know how much we appreciate their leadership in Toledo, Ohio as well at the headquarters. It is my distinct honor to bring up our keynote speaker today. As a genealogist who sort of pilfers around in family trees, when he first came here, I thought I might recognize that name. And so I did his family tree on Ancestry.com, and I was quite embarrassed that my family had not answered the call to service like the Caldwells had. In every war or conflict just about in American history, going back to the colonial era, General Caldwell's ancestors answered the call to service to be a part of the defense of this nation and to stand as a guard against those who would tear it down or embark upon a journey to threaten the freedoms that it enshrines. Here at Georgia Military College, I can tell you, some of us feel like we've been called on the carpet when we get together with General Caldwell in private and in public, and he challenges us to to do more as authentic servant leadership, or authentic servant leaders, to serve our fellow human beings. What good have you done today for your community? What good have you done for those around you? He is known to ask. And it harkens back to that famous inaugural address that JFK gave in 1961 when he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." President Caldwell, I like to call him Sir. Most everybody does. President Caldwell, I told him once, "Sir, that is a big command, and it's a big pair of shoes that we have to fill here at GMC in making sure that we do our part as authentic servant leaders, as he has charged the members of the 145th Corps and the student body to do as well." Sir, would you please take the podium as our keynote speaker today? Ladies and gentlemen, General Caldwell.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. You know, as I sat here and listened to everybody talk this morning, I thought, well, I'm not sure how much I can say as a keynote speaker at this point. I mean, everybody has so well captured the essence and the reason why we all assembled here this afternoon. It's been done very, very well. Dr. Jeff, thank you very much. You, the Exchange Club. First of all, I just thank you for making the trip up here and being a part of this. And I'm thankful that we still have organizations and entities that continue to remember and celebrate and continue to talk about those who have given so much for their nation. So thank you very much. I think many of you know that my father was a young teenager living on the island of Oahu on that December 7th day. He was out early that morning getting ready to play golf. Yes, it was a Sunday. It should have been at church, but he was out getting ready to play golf. And his father, who was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, was inside their quarters. I would later in my career have two opportunities to be stationed on that same Schofield Barracks, as they call it, there on the island of Oahu. And during that time, really came to appreciate and understand exactly what happened on that December 7th day. As I literally went by and saw the home where he had lived, I saw the barracks that still had strafing bullets when the airfield, that was called Hickam Army Airfield, was attacked that day. And it really did bring home and make real for me, as I would later ask my father, what was it like? And you know, now much to the dismay of Colonel Amy Lee, who's here, they immediately canceled all school right after that. Nobody went to school. Every young man who could drive was immediately enlisted into and became, as my father was, an Army truck driver, driving for the next 2 months, as they lived in fear that the island was about to be invaded. They were absolutely certain the Japanese were planning to attack the island. There was a tremendous amount of effort and time that was spent preparing families to evacuate and leave and go back to the mainland of the United States. And about 2 months later, they were put on a cruise ship. And as my grandmother would write in letters that we still have today and have read, it was fascinating to read what it was like. And a cruise ship that was surrounded by 7 other military vessels to protect these 3,000 men, young men, and the women and children that were put on that vessel. The young men were told there is no lifeboats. We're going over capacity about 5 times of what this ship can handle. If we are torpedoed, and we expect to be, some of us, hopefully not you because you'll be in the middle, you need to be prepared not to get in a lifeboat. Rather, just grab a life raft or vest and do the best you can. Young 14-year-old boy being told, do not get in a boat. It is for the women and the children that are here, the very young children who will need to go into those. And as they literally traveled with no light at night, with about 15 people to a stateroom that was made for 4, that they'd crammed into this vessel, she talked about the 9-day trip that normally is about 4.5 days to get back to the California coast, and when they finally reached safety. But my dad said it left an indelible mark on him in the fear that they all felt that entire 9 days trying to get back to the mainland, the safety of our nation. Well, today you heard stories already, one great one by Dr. Jeff about Dory. He is. If you don't understand the story of Dory, let me just give a little bit more into that. He was a cook. That's all we allowed black men at that point, one of the few jobs you could get in the United States Navy. We hadn't progressed to where we are today. And so, but he took the job because he wanted to serve his nation. So Dory that morning of December 7th had just finished serving breakfast to the men on the USS West Virginia. For many, it would be their last meal. For Dory, who had never been allowed to touch a weapon, all he was supposed to do was cook. But when the attack started, he sprung into action. He went ahead and helped evacuate his captain who had been injured, started evacuating other men who were injured, and yet at the same time went outside and manned what we called a 50 caliber machine gun and started shooting it. He's credited with shooting down perhaps 6 Japanese Zeros that were attacking that day, despite never having been trained on this weapon system. When asked about it later, he would say, "It wasn't hard. I just pulled the trigger and she worked fine." The men who had served breakfast that morning had literally gone on to save countless lives. Dory Miller. Dory Miller would receive the Navy Cross, our second highest award for valor in our nation, for his actions that morning. But sadly, 2 years later, as he continued to serve this nation of ours, he was aboard the Lipscomb Bay when it was struck by a torpedo. And the only message his parents had was he is missing in action and was never to return home. He gave his life for this nation, even though this nation at the time very much restricted and didn't give him the full patriotic love and care that we should have. There's also another one that was Father Schmidt. If you haven't heard the story of Father Schmidt, that's pretty fascinating. They called him the patriotic priest. Loved America, loved serving, and he was the chaplain aboard the USS Oklahoma. And on that day, the USS Oklahoma rolled over, and hundreds of men were trapped inside that hull. And there was just one little escape area, and he was right there. He could very easily have climbed out right at that moment and saved himself. Nobody would have ever thought less. That's what he probably should have done. That's what most people would have expected. But that's not what the patriotic priest did. He stayed on board, and he continued to help other men get through that hatch, the one hatch that allowed them to get to safety. But unfortunately, eventually the ship rolled, and he didn't make it. For his actions that day, his family was posthumously awarded the Silver Star. And then there is another young sailor, Joe George. Joe George is your typical young man, very typical. He's on quarters waiting to get, in other words, he's locked in his room waiting to get court-martialed for getting into fights. But when they were attacked that morning, he took that spirit of Americanism and he turned around and went up on the deck. They were yelling at him, cut the lines from the vessel they were in, called the Vestal, to the Arizona. And many of you know about the Arizona. But they wanted to cut the line because the lines were pulling the Vestal with Arizona as it was starting to go under. And yet on the deck, he could see men that needed to be rescued. So, ignoring orders to cut the line, he threw a rope over and tightened it down and enabled 7 men to hand over hand leave the Arizona and get to his vessel for safety. And then it was that point that the Arizona went down. Those 7 men were the only 7 that survived from the forward aft of the USS Arizona. And they did so because of Joe George, who took into his own hands what needed to be done to save the life of another. Dory, Father Schmidt, and Joe were probably the most unlikeliest heroes that morning. It wasn't their rank, it wasn't their social status, it wasn't their color that distinguished them. It was their character, shaped by an unshakable values held deep somewhere in their core. A commitment to the words that we all echo here of duty, honor, and country. a love of their nation that was stronger than any instinct of self-preservation, and a deep, deep willingness to lead when the responsibility fell on them. When I think about heroes like these three, and America's long history of men and women who have sacrificed and placed themselves in harm's way in the name of duty, honor, and country, I know that we as a nation are incredibly blessed to have men and women who selflessly have given of themselves to others. I am thankful that we continue to see that kind of develop in the young men and women here today on this campus, that we see banners that remind them that it is about a duty and an honor and a love of your nation that is imperative on each of us to preserve what so many before us have given in order so that we can live like we do today. Here we create a new generation of leaders. We make sure that they are deeply committed to the words of duty, honor, and love of their nation, because we know that any man or woman who goes above and beyond to answer the call of duty, especially when it's least expected, has deep within them core values that were instilled in them somewhere along the line that led them to want to selflessly serve and, if necessary, give their lives for others. I'm thankful for this great nation that we live in. I'm thankful for what I continue to see every day in this nation of ours. I pray that we all continue to understand and recognize the sacrifices that so many men and women and their families have made so that we today can live as we do in a nation where we have incredible freedoms, choices, and opportunities that didn't exist just 100 years ago. May God bless them all, bless you all, and thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of the ceremony today. Thank you, Jeff.
At this time, I ask Lieutenant General Caldwell, Colonel Larry McClendon, and Mr. Fussell Hughes to take the wreath provided by the Exchange Club of Milledgeville and place it in front of the World War II Memorial here on the grounds of historic Georgia Military College to remember the sacrifice, service, and lives of those American heroes from Pearl Harbor and beyond. Will the audience please stand as the wreath is placed, to be followed with cannon fire, and help us honor this occasion with the playing of taps. Gentlemen, would you please lay the wreath?
Order. Colors.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you laying the wreath today, and there it will stay for a little while to commemorate those that we lost, not only in Pearl Harbor, but also throughout the world, World War II. So as General Caldwell so eloquently put it, America, if you read anything into his speech, is America is a truly unique and wonderful place. I'm sure that many of you remember the British actress, Angela Lansbury. I almost called her Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote. That's how she was most well known. Toward the end of her life, she lived about 96 years. She was asked by an interviewer from the BBC, what's one of the highlights of your career that you or your life that you remember the most, rather? She had won Emmys, she had won a Tony, been a member of the Kennedy Center Honors, and she looked at the camera, looked at the interviewer, and she said, the moment I became an American, if that tells you anything. At this time, we're going to ask Reverend Portwood to return to the podium to close us out in a word of prayer.
you would please join me in prayer. Divine Creator, as we have remembered the lives that were lost at Pearl Harbor, we ask that you would make us instruments of your peace. May we always be prepared to seek reconciliation, to serve our fellow people, and to work together towards peace for all. We thank you today for those who defended America's freedom and who demonstrated humanity's goodness. And our prayer is that we would never have to respond as these heroes have done, but that we would also always be ready to step up and to sacrificially serve if the need arises. And may we all be strengthened today by your continued grace. And we pray this in all the holy names of God. Amen and amen.
Again, General Caldwell, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here today on this campus to celebrate this event. Next year, I believe December 7th is a Saturday, so the sacrifice will be even greater for those who have to travel across the state, Fossil. So you'll have to give up a little bit of your Saturday. But we do want to say thank you to everyone, especially the members of the 145th Corps of Cadets, for taking time out of your classroom responsibilities to be here today. Thank you to the leadership of the Corps, Commandant Steve Pitt, Colonel Robel Ramirez, and Major Benjamin Carrick. Thank you so much for the cooperation not only of Georgia Military College, but the National Exchange Club, the Georgia District Exchange Club, and the Exchange Club of Milledgeville. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremonies for the day, and we thank you for your attendance. God bless you all. Hey, Terry. Okay. All right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Will you ever get everything you needed?
Yes, sir. I'm going to get General Caldwell.
Get right in the middle here.
Hey, awesome. Thank you for coming up here. Albany's a long ways away.
Yeah, I'm Donna.
Here, tell Jeff and the crew down there hello. I will. I will. Good to see you as always. Good to see you too. I'll never forget Mallory making sure I had my own parking spot. She did that before she left. She had a little ceremony for me.
Jeff is very, very
As you should be. Yeah, as you should
always
be.
engaged.
That was at 37 years. Now I'm at 40. So. You think you're ever going to retire? As long as the good Lord allows me to pick this stuff up, yeah, sure. We'll wait our time. So, you did great. You did very good. Yes, sir. You are live.
Thank you, sir, for coming. Appreciate you